Amsterdam stood still. Not because of a political crisis, not because of a national celebration, but because one man from South Korea dared to rewrite history. Who else could move an entire European capital with just his presence? And more importantly, why is Jin, BTS's eldest member, the one to break a barrier no Korean soloist has ever touched before, as the neon lights of Ziggo Dome lit up the Amsterdam sky? A wave of realization spread across the continent. This wasn't just another concert. This wasn't just another idol show. This was a declaration. Jin of BTS has officially become the first Korean solo artist in history to headline the prestigious Ziggo Dome, and the world was not ready for the emotional gravity that would follow. From the moment his face appeared on the giant screens outside the venue, fans who had traveled across oceans froze in disbelief. For years, armies have seen him shine under the shadow of Seven. But now, standing alone, he wasn't just filling the shoes of a global act. He was stepping into a legacy that had never before existed. And yet, this raises a piercing question. Why the Ziggo Dome? Why now? Why Jin? The answer, as always with Jin, lies in silence. There was no flashy promotional campaign that overshadowed his artistry. There were no headlines claiming he would make history. Because Jin has never needed those things. What he needed, and what he finally received, was a stage large enough to hold the quiet intensity of his presence. A venue that could witness what happens when a man who spent a decade supporting others is finally placed at the center. The magnitude of this achievement cannot be overstated. The Ziggo Dome is not a casual stop on a European tour. It's a fortress of global recognition, having housed the world's greatest performers, from Beyoncé to Coldplay. That Jin, a soloist fresh from military duty, without a solo album rollout like others before him, would be the first Korean artist to headline it, shatters every conventional standard the industry has imposed. Observers from the music industry remained baffled. Some questioned the logic, others called it a risk. But what unfolded on that stage was not just validation, it was revelation. As the crowd of over 17,000 raised their silver ocean of light sticks, many were in tears before the first note was played. Because they weren't just witnessing a concert, they were witnessing the result of a promise kept. The promise that Seokjin, who once said he was never the best dancer or loudest member, would one day stand on his own and still move the earth beneath him. And he did. With elegance. With no excessive choreography.
No explosive pyrotechnics.
Just music. Just raw vocals. Just emotion. And that was enough to hold every soul in the arena hostage. Every detail of the night was surgical. The setlist was composed not for crowd-pleasing, but for emotional demolition. Tracks that hinted at longing. Songs that felt like whispered confessions. Interludes that were more like diary entries. This wasn't a performance. It was a confrontation between Jin and the thousands who had waited in silence for him to take his rightful place in the spotlight. One of the most haunting moments came mid-show, when Jin paused, looked at the audience, and smiled. Not the playful smile of a variety show veteran, but the quiet smile of a man who had finally arrived where he was always meant to be. The lights dimmed, the piano played softly, and the crowd understood that something irreversible was happening. And it begs yet another question. Will this night remain a one-time miracle, or is it the start of a new era? The industry must now reckon with a truth it has long ignored. For years, Jin was often labeled as the visual, as if beauty was all he had to offer. But Ziggo Dome proved what ARMY has known all along. His artistry is no less deep, no less brave, and no less groundbreaking than any global performer to precede him. The crowd didn't come for spectacle. They came for truth. And Jin delivered it without apology. The timing, too, is impossible to ignore. Just months after completing his military service, Jin could have quietly returned to group activities or delayed his solo journey until safer timing. But instead, he chose to step into the fire. He chose Ziggo Dome. He chose risk.
Why?
Was this a personal mission? A symbolic gesture? A message to someone? Or perhaps a message to himself? Whatever the reason, it worked. Social media exploded. Fans from France, Germany, the UK, and across Europe documented every second. Even non-fans, passers-by in Amsterdam who knew little of BTS, stopped and watched, pulled in by the gravitational pull of a man who didn't scream for attention, but earned it through sheer presence. At one point, a Dutch media outlet called it the quietest earthquake Amsterdam has ever known. And they were right. But underneath the glowing reviews, the record-breaking attendance, and the thunderous applause lies something deeper. Something that cannot be measured by statistics. What happened at Ziggo Dome was not simply about Jin making history. It was about history recognizing Jin. It was about every moment he stayed silent when others spoke. Every joke he made to deflect emotion. Every time he stepped back so others could shine. All of it converged into this one night, where none of it could be ignored anymore, and the question now hanging in the air is no longer, can Jin do it alone? It's, who will dare follow what he just did? Because after Ziggo Dome, nothing will be the same. And ARMY? They didn't just witness a performance, they witnessed a reckoning. No security detail, no grandiose parade, no attention-seeking prelude could prepare anyone for the raw magnetism that unfolded once Jin walked on stage. There was no announcement, no dramatic overture, just him, walking into the blinding spotlight alone, with the silence of thousands swelling into screams. And in that instant, it wasn't just a soloist stepping out. It was an era colliding with its future. His voice, clear, controlled, piercing, didn't just echo through the walls of the Ziggo Dome. It pressed into the hearts of fans who had waited, feared, doubted, and still believed. Each lyric felt like a testimony, not to stardom, but to survival. Midway through the set, a peculiar tension overtook the room. Jin sat at the edge of a stage. No instruments, no backtrack. Just breath, just silence. And then, a soft line from a yet unreleased piece escaped his lips. For 3 minutes, time fractured. Not a single fan moved. Not a single phone was raised. It was sacred. That moment alone is now being called the quiet collapse by armies online. Why? Because never in the history of the Ziggo Dome had silence been so loud. And while his set ended with thunderous applause and a dazzling curtain of light, Jin's closing words were a paradox. Calm, yet shattering. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said. No further explanation. But for those who knew, that sentence was enough. Was he speaking to the fans? To someone else? Or to the boy he used to be, waiting in the wings of a global phenomenon called BTS? Whatever the answer, the impact is irreversible. Not only has Jin cemented himself as a solo force beyond idol metrics, but he has also dismantled every preconception the Western stage has held about Korean artists needing a group to fill arenas. What Jin did was no longer about representation. It was domination with grace. Industry insiders are now scrambling for explanations. Major outlets who once ignored him are now chasing interviews. Critics are dissecting his stage strategy. But the truth is, there was no strategy. There was only Jin. And he was enough. To be clear, this was not a comeback. This was not a promotional cycle. This was not a label-orchestrated campaign. This was a declaration of identity, a reclamation of narrative, and a moment that may very well redefine what solo success from the K-pop world looks like. So what happens next? Will Jin return to Korea and quietly rejoin BTS promotions? Will he follow up this performance with a full solo tour? Or was Ziggo Dome a one-time message for a world that wasn't paying attention? Only he knows. And perhaps that's what makes this even more devastatingly powerful, because every performance, every decision, every silent moment was laced with the unknown. And that tension, the fear of impermanence, is what gave the concert its unbearable emotional weight. ARMY didn't just leave Ziggo Dome with photos or videos. They left with something far more permanent, a realization that this man, who for so long hid behind laughter and played the fool for others, had been quietly preparing for something far greater than fame. He was preparing for legacy, and tonight, that legacy began. Not with fireworks, but with silence. Not with an explosion, but with a single voice, finally heard, fully felt, and impossible to forget. The question now is not whether the world is ready for Jin. The question is, was the world ever worthy of him?